Tonight, 2 dead bodies are discovered in Tiroche Castries. 23 cases of COVID-19 are confirmed Sunday after 43 were confirmed on Saturday. And the Prime Minister and Education Minister defend the decision to reopen schools. The details of these stories and more are coming up.
This is the Hot 7 Nightly News with Lovelace and Amy Joseph.
Good night. It is Monday, the 11th of January, 2021. Welcome to the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. I'm Lovely St. Amy Joseph. Thank you for joining us. 2 dead bodies were discovered in Tiroche Castries on Monday. One was that of a female, the other of a male identified as Peter Joseph. Online news agency St. Lucia Times broke the news on Monday afternoon and indicated that police sources had disclosed details surrounding the possible nature of the matter. Attempts to contact the police press office for verification of the facts surrounding the matter proved successful just before news time. When we spoke with the police press relations office, they indicated that officers were still on the scene trying to ascertain the details surrounding the matter. We will have more information on this incident as soon as the details become clear and we have something official from the police department. In other news, the Ministry of Health on Sunday, the 10th of January, received confirmation of 24 new cases of COVID-19 from a batch of 278 COVID-19 tests. That disclosure was made on Monday. It brings the total number of cases diagnosed in country to date to 462. This follows the announcement of 43 cases on Saturday. All 24 cases announced on Monday are St. Lucia nationals ranging in ages 11 to 47 years. They are from Castries, Gros-Islet, Anstey, Dennery, Barboneau, and Choiseul. The Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Sharon Belmar-George, addressed concerns about the reopening of school amid this high number of cases.
With the increase in the number of COVID-19 cases diagnosed over the past week, we understand the concern felt by students, parents, teachers, administrative staff, and the general public at large. Access to updated information and school-specific protocols is key to managing without panic and anxiety. The Ministry of Health and Wellness remains available to provide support as needed to the sector as it reopens educational institutions. The COVID-19 environment requires increased effort by every single one of us. Parents, please ensure that children are kept at home or taken to the closest respiratory clinics if they develop respiratory symptoms. Do ensure that they are given a clean face mask daily with hand sanitizer. Encourage our children to cooperate with the school authorities to keep all of us safe. Keep the lines of communication open to address any fears that they may have.
The Ministry of Health says it is working to strengthen the surveillance system to detect and to manage the anticipated increases in COVID-19 numbers over the next 14 days. The public is advised to take personal responsibility to protect themselves and their family. Prime Minister Alan Chastanet and Minister for Education Dr. Gail Rigobert continue to defend the reopening of schools. Prime Minister Chastanet explained that although the situation with COVID-19 remains fluid, such decisions are guided by advice from the Chief Medical Officer and the Ministry of Health. Both the Prime Minister and the Education Minister stress that living with COVID-19 is something that everyone will have to adapt to. Genevieve Gonzague reports.
Although there were many complaints, schools officially reopened on Monday 11th, despite the many calls to delay the return to on-site schooling. Prime Minister Alan Chastanet explained the rationale behind the reopening in a meeting with the press on Monday morning. The Prime Minister notes that many became even more skeptical given the recent announcement of 43 cases of COVID-19 on Ireland. He says the cases on Saturday were an amalgamation of cases throughout the week and not just one day.
As we have said nationally, that this is about not only saving lives, but saving livelihoods. Going to school is a livelihood. And when you think of the amount of time that kids have had to be out of classrooms, and if in fact that the country has been successful enough in its protocols that the CMO believes that there is no imminent threat, then we should take advantage of the hard work that we've put in here and try to get our kids back to school.
Many have expressed that the protocols set for the reopening of schools are not specific enough to alleviate the worry of teachers and students. Education Minister Dr. Gail Rigobert expressed that there was much consultation in the effort to reopen schools.
The documentation shared, whether it be the school specific protocols or the education continuity plan, were very, very detailed, and the principals went through these with their staff, as well as ministry officials engaged with the district education officers on what was contained therein as well.
Prime Minister Shastney went on to explain that funding was provided to the Ministry of Education to ensure that schools reopened in a safe manner.
The Ministry of Finance's budget remains fluid. So these are things that you cannot plan for. So there's always about reallocating resources. So every time you start up and then you have to go back down. So the answer is yes. I don't think the Ministry of Education can say that funding has been an issue in terms of doing what we have to do here. And is there ever a time where we can say there's enough money going in? Never. Right? The Ministry of Education was woefully underfunded in the past.
Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzalez.
Meanwhile, the St. Lucia Teachers Union is not convinced that the Ministry of Education has everything under control when it comes to the reopening of school. Over the weekend, the union, in a public statement, called on the ministry to rethink its position on the reopening of school in light of the highest increase in COVID-19 on island on Saturday. In an interview with Hot 7 TV on Monday, SLTU President Don Howell says the Ministry of Education continues to act without conscience when it comes to its treatment of teachers. On Monday, schools officially reopened, but not without misgivings being expressed by the St. Lucia Teachers Union on the eve of the reopening. The SLTU called for the Ministry of Education to delay the reopening of school due to health and safety concerns after an announcement of 43 COVID-19 cases on Saturday. It was the highest daily tally so far. What was the response of the Ministry of Education to the statement put out by the Teachers Union calling for a delay of the reopening of school? We put the question to SLTU President Don Howell.
The Ministry of Education, like I would have said on many occasions, continue to disregard the opinion, the views of the professionals on the ground. They continue to disregard it. They continue to operate as if it were business as usual in the time of a pandemic. We continue to advocate in the hope that the Ministry of Education would have some measure of conscience in dealing with educators in St. Lucia.
So you say that there has been no contact?
No, there has been no. There have been no consultation and no contact since then, and that remains also a concern for the SLTU.
So what is the way forward for the Teachers Union, given that educators and the ministry are at loggerheads on this matter? Despite the concerns of teachers, they did in fact turn up for school on Monday.
The SLTU is assessing the situation on the ground because the ministry has indicated that it has all in place for the reopening of school. We are assessing the situation on the ground and what our members are being faced with. And once we are able to fully assess the current situation that actually existed in school, then we will decide on our next course of action. The teachers showed up for duty. The teachers wore their SLTU colors today, standing in solidarity with each other. They wanted to show everyone that it is not about staying home. They actually want to get back into a physical space, but they are concerned about health and safety matters.
Howell says there continues to be a great level of anxiety among teachers, parents, and students. He noted that many parents chose not to send their children to school. In light of all of this, he says the SLTU is appalled by the approach of the Ministry of Education, and he insists that the continuity plan that the ministry now has in place was only crafted after agitation and demands from teachers. The National Students' Council is also expressing misgivings about the reopening of schools.
On Saturday, 43 cases of COVID-19 were announced, 42 of which were St. Lucia nationals. As students all over the island made their way to their various schools on Monday morning, the public relations officer of the St. Lucia National Students' Council, Jean-Luc Constantine, placed a myriad of questions to the authorities and made a plea to government to continue with online classes, given the recent spike in numbers.
The NSC urges the Ministry of Education to rethink the reopening of schools and postpone the reopening to a later date, until the public receives confirmation that in-island transmission has decreased or has been contained. We are asking that students go back to online education.
Constantine explained that if push comes to shove, the representative body for students will not shy away from asking students to put their help.
We continue, and we will continue to do this, to urge the ministry to go back to the drawing board and rethink exactly how we are going to open up our schools. Because in opening our schools, we are not only opening to our students, but also to COVID-19. And in any eventuality where cases substantially increase or a large number of students contract COVID-19, the St. Lucia National Students' Council is prepared to take the necessary steps to advise students to remain off the school's compound in order to ensure their health and safety in any particular district. Once again, we urge the Ministry of Education and all relevant stakeholders to return to the drawing board.
He calls on relevant authorities to do everything in their power to ensure the well-being of students and asks that Students' Council and education officials remain in frequent dialogue.
We consider it necessary that the Ministry of Education provide monthly reports on student access to online learning platforms, the effectiveness of COVID-19 protocols in our schools, and the potential gaps in delivery of the curriculum. With these reports, we can work with the Ministry of Education and the relevant stakeholders to significantly increase student outreach and close these existing gaps. As face-to-face schooling continues, the St. Lucia National Students' Council will begin to engage with students to assess the student learning experience in order to facilitate the delivery of quality education during the pandemic.
The National Students' Council maintains that schooling should mainly remain online and that the government should bolster efforts to ensure that students have access to devices and Wi-Fi. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzague.
Stay with us. Still to come, the District 3 Education Officer argues that school is the safest place for students. Bus operators say the anticipated numbers of students making the commute was far lower than expected. And the NCOPT warns bus operators that despite the reopening of school, passenger limits are still in full effect.